Serafina Sterling was considered untouchable. A woman whose father's billions had buried secrets and silenced witnesses for 24 years. And yet no one ever accounted for Maya Linwood. Because Maya wasn't a rival or a jealous ex-girlfriend. She was a nobody. A waitress earning minimum wage who was supposed to be invisible. But on July 14th, inside Manhattan's exclusive penthouse, that invisible girl didn't just shatter a champagne glass. She shattered the entire Sterling dynasty, and this wasn't a fairy tale. It was the twisted true story of how the girl serving drinks ended up owning the empire. You think you know the rich, but you have no idea. Because if you live in New York City, you know there are two versions of the city. The concrete jungle where people shove through subway turnstiles and eat dollar slices, and then the stratosphere, which isn't just a place but a frequency that exists in penthouses overlooking Central Park. In members-only clubs where entry requires a senator's referral. And in the back of tinted Escalades idling on Fifth Avenue. And while Maya Linwood lived in the first version, in a fourth-floor walk-up in Queens, with a radiator that hissed like a dying cat, she worked in the stratosphere. Maya was 23, with sharp, intelligent eyes she had learned to keep lowered. And she worked at Lovely, a supper club so exclusive it had no sign. Only a heavy iron door on a cobblestone street in Tribeca, where the staff weren't just trained to serve, but trained to disappear. The golden rule being simple: see everything. Say nothing, and never ever make eye contact unless spoken to. And on a humid Tuesday night in late June, the atmosphere inside Lovely was electric. The air thick with expensive Woodwood cologne and truffle oil. All because seated at table 1, the booth with the best lighting and the most privacy, was Serafina Sterling. The daughter of Richard Sterling, the private equity titan who effectively owned half of Midtown. A woman beautiful in a way that felt aggressive. With platinum blonde hair like spun silk and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Surrounded by her usual court, including Caleb Montgomery, the son of a media mogul known for lazy charm and a dangerous driving record. And a collection of exquisite, vapid hangers-on who laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Maya was assigned to table 1, the shift from hell. Though the tips usually covered her rent for a month. Usually, and when Serafina said, "More vodka, Grey Goose. And tell the bartender if he bruises the mint in my mojito again, I'll have him deported," without looking up from her phone. Her bored drawl carrying the sound of someone who had never heard the word no. Maya replied, "Of course, Miss Sterling," in a practiced monotone. Moving with the efficiency of a ghost as she replaced napkins, refilled water glasses, and navigated the crowded floor with a heavy tray balanced on one hand. Invisible until she wasn't, because at 11:45 p.m., as Maya set a fresh round of cocktails on the table and leaned in to place a martini, Caleb Montgomery drunk and gesturing wildly while telling a story about crashing his Porsche in Monaco, threw his arm back and drove his elbow hard into Maya's ribs, destabilizing the tray as time seemed to slow. Maya straining to correct the balance until gravity won. The martini tipping and an olive and 3 ounces of premium vodka splashing directly into Serafina Sterling's lap, instantly soaking into the white silk of her archival Versailles dress and turning it translucent. And though the music didn't stop, the silence at table 1 was deafening as Caleb froze, the hangers-on gasped, and Serafina slowly looked down at her lap and then up at Maya with eyes like icy blue voids. While Maya said, "I am so sorry," grabbing a linen napkin and adding, "Sir, you bumped my arm," only for Serafina to whisper, "I don't," a single word cracking like a whip as she stood, wet silk clinging to her legs. Ignoring Caleb, the one who caused it, and fixing her gaze solely on the waitress, calling her a clumsy, stupid little cow in a voice loud enough to carry over the ambient house music and turn nearby heads. Demanding if Maya had any idea what this was, and declaring that the dress cost more than her entire life. And when Maya said it was an accident, her jaw tightening as she followed the rule to apologize even when right. Something in Serafina's tone, the sheer dehumanization, sparked a flame in Maya's chest, prompting her to add that he hit her. Only for Serafina to hiss that she didn't care who hit her as she stepped closer, invading Maya's personal space, smelling of Chanel No. 5 and malice, and reminding her coldly, "You are here to serve us. That is your only function. If you can't do it without ruining 5-figure garments, you shouldn't be here." Serafina picked up a glass of red wine, a Pinot Noir from the bottle they had ordered, which cost $3,000. "Let's see how you like it," Serafina said. With a flick of her wrist, she threw the wine into Maya's face. The dark red liquid burned Maya's eyes and dripped off her chin, staining her white uniform shirt blood red. The club went silent. Even the DJ lowered the volume. Everyone was watching. The billionaire's daughter had just baptized the help. Maya stood there, blinded, dripping, humiliated. The shame was hot and suffocating. She wiped the wine from her eyes. She looked at Serafina, who was smirking, waiting for the tears, waiting for the bag. But Maya didn't cry. She didn't beg. She broke the rule. Maya took a step forward, ignoring the manager rushing towards them. She looked Serafina Sterling dead in the eye, a direct violation of protocol, and spoke clearly. "Your father paid off the DA in 2019 to cover up Caleb's hit and run," Maya said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. "And you were in the passenger seat." The smirk vanished from Serafina's face. Caleb turned pale, his glass halfway to his mouth. The air left the table. "Get out," Serafina whispered, her voice trembling, not with anger, but with sudden sharp fear. "You're fired," the manager, a frantic man named Gil, screamed, grabbing Mia's arm. "Get out now." Maya shook him off. She took her apron off, bowled it up, and dropped it into the puddle of wine on the floor. She held Serafina's gaze for 1 second longer, long enough to let the heirs know that the invisible girl had been watching, listening, and remembering everything. Maya turned and walked out the iron door into the humid New York night. She was trembling, adrenaline, clear as throat, coursing through her veins. She had just lost her job. She had likely blacklisted herself from every high-end venue in the city. But as she walked toward the subway, Maya Linwood didn't feel fear. She felt the grim satisfaction of a soldier who had just fired the first shot in a war. Because Serafina didn't know the truth. She didn't know that Maya wasn't just a waitress. Maya had taken that job at Lovely for a reason. She had been hunting Serafina Sterling for 2 years, and tonight the game had finally begun. The next morning, Maya's clear-as-throat phone was a brick of silence. She sat on her fire escape, drinking cheap instant coffee, replaying the night in her head. She knew retaliation would come. Men like Richard Sterling didn't leave loose ends. And girls like Serafina didn't forgive public defiance. She expected a lawsuit. She expected a cease and desist. She didn't expect the Blacktown car. It pulled up to a building in Queens at 11 a.m., looking ridiculously out of place, amongst the dented Hondas and graffiti-tagged vans. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out. He didn't look like a lawyer. He looked like a cleaner. He buzzed her apartment. "Miss Linwood." Miss Sterling would like a word. Mia's instinct screamed run, but she had come too far to run. She grabbed her bag, checked the pepper spray in her pocket, and went downstairs. The car ride was silent. They didn't go to Richard Sterling's office in Midtown. They drove out to the Hamptons. The journey took 2 hours, transitioning from the grime of the city to the manicured emerald green hedges of the ultra-wealthy. They pulled into the driveway of the Sterling estate on Meadow Lane. It was a monstrosity of glass and steel perched on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, looking more like a villain's lair than a home. Maya was led onto the back terrace. Serafina was there, lounging on a white chaise, wearing oversized sunglasses and a caftan that fluttered in the sea breeze. Caleb was nowhere to be seen. Serafina didn't offer her a seat. "You know," Serafina said, taking a sip of iced tea, "my father's lawyers drafted a lawsuit this morning. Defamation, breach of contract, emotional distress. We could bury you in litigation until your grandchildren are paying off your debt." "It's not defamation if it's true," Mia said, standing tall. "And we both know it is." Serafina lowered her sunglasses. The bruise on her ego from last night was clearly still fresh. But there was something else in her eyes now. Curiosity. "How do you know?" Serafina asked. "About the accident?" "I serve drinks. Serafina, people don't look at the help. They think we're furniture. You and Caleb talked about it 3 weeks ago at the corner booth. You were laughing about how cheap the settlement was." Serafina studied her. "You're smart. Sharper than the idiots I usually hang out with. Is that why I'm here? To be complimented?" "No, you're here because you're dangerous," Serafina said. She stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, looking out at the crashing waves. "My father wants to destroy you. He wants to ensure you never work again." "But I had a better idea." Serafina turned back, a wicked smile playing on her lips. "I'm bored, Maya. I'm bored of my friends who are terrified of me. I'm bored of Caleb, who is an idiot, and I'm intrigued by you. You stood up to me. Nobody does that." Serafina picked up a leather folder from the table and tossed it toward Mir. It slid across the glass surface. "That is a non-disclosure agreement. It buys your silence regarding the accident and anything else you heard at Lubiel. In exchange, I don't sue you." "I'm not signing that." Mia said, "There's a second clause." Serafina interrupted. "Read it." Maya opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the legal jargon until she hit the employment section. Position: personal assistant, companion to Serafina Sterling. Salary: $150,000 per annum plus room and board. Maya looked up, stunned. "You want to hire me?" "I want to keep my enemies close," Serafina corrected. "If you work for me, you sign the NDA. If you break the NDA, you go to jail. But if you work for me, you live here. You travel with me. You get a taste of the life you clearly resent but secretly want." "Why would you do this?" Mir asked, genuinely baffled. "I threw your hypocrisy in your face." "Exactly?" Serafina whispered, stepping close again, recreating the intimacy of the nightclub confrontation. "I need someone real. And I think it would be fun to break you. To see how long your little moral high ground lasts when you're dripping in diamonds and drinking vintage champagne. Everyone has a price, Maya. I want to find yours." It was a trap. Maya knew it was a trap. Serafina wanted to turn her into a pet to humiliate her slowly day by day, proving that the waitress could be bought just like everyone else. But Serafina didn't know the full story. She didn't know that Maya's mother had been Richard Sterling's secretary 25 years ago. She didn't know that Mia had a birth certificate in a safety deposit box that listed Richard Sterling as her father. Maya wasn't just entering the lion's den to serve the queen. She was entering to burn the kingdom down. This was the access she had prayed for. Maya pulled a pen from her bag. She looked at the contract then, at Serafina. "I have one condition," Maya said. "You're in no position to bargain. I want my student loans paid off today in full, separate from the salary." Serafina laughed, a bright tinkling sound. "Done. That's barely pocket change." Maya signed the paper. The ink felt heavy, like blood. "Welcome to the family, Maya," Serafina smiled. It was the smile of a shark, sensing blood in the water. "Thank you, Miss Sterling," Mia said, slipping back into her role. As Maya was escorted to the guest wing, a suite larger than her entire apartment building, she texted a single number on her burner phone. The contact was saved as unknown. The text read, "I'm in. It's starting." Maya looked around her new room. Silk curtains, marble floors, a view of the ocean. She walked to the mirror and looked at herself. The wine stain was gone, but the war paint was on. She had sold her soul to the devil. But Serafina forgot one thing. The devil was a fallen angel. But Maya was the judgment that was coming for them all. But things were about to get complicated, because that evening a third player entered the game. And he wasn't Caleb, and he wasn't Richard. He was the one person Maya hadn't accounted for. The third player wasn't a family member. He didn't carry the Sterling name, but he carried their secrets. His name was Gabriel Stone. Maya met him 3 hours after moving into the estate. She was in the library ostensibly looking for a book to read, but actually scanning the spines for a safe or a hidden latch, the kind of clichés rich men used to hide their ledgers. The history of the Roman Empire, a bit heavy for light reading. The voice was low, growly, and came from the shadows near the heavy oak door. Maya didn't jump. She had trained herself not to flinch. She turned slowly. Gabriel Stone was leaning against the doorframe. He cleared his throat, was in his early 30s, wearing a suit that cost more than a car, but fit him like tactical gear. He had dark hair, a scar running through his left eyebrow, and eyes that were unsettlingly observant. He wasn't handsome in the way Caleb was. Caleb was a boy. Gabriel was a man who looked like he had done terrible things and slept soundly afterwards. "I like history," Maya said, sliding the book back onto the shelf. "It teaches you how empires fall." Gabriel walked into the room. He moved with a predatory grace, silent on the Persian rug. "I'm Gabriel Stone, head of security for Richard Sterling. I manage the family's liabilities." "I know who you are," Maya said. She did. Gabriel Stone was the cleaner. When Serafina got a DUI, Gabriel made the police report vanish. When Richard's business partners got greedy, Gabriel paid them a visit. He was the gatekeeper Mia needed to get past. "And I know who you are, Mia," Gabriel said, stopping 3 feet from her. The proximity was intimidating. "You're the waitress who embarrassed Serafina. Now you're the pet project. Serafina thinks you're a toy. She thinks she's playing with you. And what do you think?" "I think you're a grifter," Gabriel said, his voice void of emotion. "I ran a background check on you the second Serafina called me. Maya Linwood, born in Queens. Mother passed away 5 years ago. No father listed. Community college dropout. Dead. You're desperate, and desperate people are dangerous." He took a step closer. Maya could smell tobacco and rain on his jacket. "Here is how this works," he continued. "You are here on a probationary basis. You break a vase, I don't care. You steal a spoon, I don't care. But if you go near Richard Sterling's office or his computer or his files, I won't fire you. I will dismantle you. Do we understand each other?" Maya looked up at him, her heart hammering against her ribs, but she forced a smile. "I'm just here to hold Serafina's purse, Mr. Stone. You're imagining threats where there aren't any." Gabriel studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "We'll see." For the next 2 weeks, life at the Sterling estate was a psychological war zone. Serafina was relentless. She didn't treat Maya like a slave. She treated her like a doll. "Wear this," Serafina would say, throwing a dress 2 sizes too small at Maya. "We're going to brunch." At brunch, Serafina introduced Maya to her socialite friends as my little rescue project. They asked condescending questions about taking the subway or shopping at Walmart, and Maya answered each with polite, vapid sweetness, all while memorizing names, connections, and scandals. But the real work happened at night. Maya discovered the house was wired with smart cameras, though there were blind spots: the servants' corridors, the back patio. One Tuesday night, Richard Sterling arrived home. A helicopter landing on the back lawn, the rotors whipping sea spray into a frenzy. Maya watched from her window as her father, the man who had abandoned her mother, pregnant and alone, stepped out, older than in his photos, gray-haired, furious on the phone. Maya needed to get close. His biometrics, a fingerprint, a voice recording. Something to access the encrypted server with evidence of his illegal offshore dealings, the dealings that, according to her mother's old journals, had built his fortune. The opportunity came 2 days later when Serafina hosted a casual cocktail hour for Richard's business associates. Maya was on duty pouring drinks, a task Serafina insisted on to remind her of her roots, and she circulated with a tray of champagne until she saw Richard standing alone by the fireplace. This was it. She walked over. "Champagne, Mr. Sterling." Richard turned. Cold gray eyes on her, distracted, reaching for the glass, and as he did, Maya deliberately let her fingers brush his "not flirting." "Just checking for a ring, a watch, anything useful." Their eyes met, and Richard paused, frowning, really looking at her. The color drained from his cheeks. "Do I know you?" he asked, rough. Maya's heart stopped. She looked exactly like her mother at 23. "I'm Maya, sir, Serafina's new assistant." Richard stared, a mix of confusion and dawning horror. He opened his mouth, but a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. "Mr. Sterling," Gabriel Stone said, appearing out of nowhere. "Call on the secure line." "It's the senator." Richard blinked, snapped out of the trance, looked at Gabriel, then at Maya, narrowing his eyes with suspicion. "Right. Excuse me," he said, walking away, glancing back twice. Gabriel tightened his grip on Maya's shoulder, not painful, but a warning. "You're swimming in deep water, Maya," he whispered. "Richard doesn't like new faces, especially ones that look like ghosts." Maya pulled away. "I was just serving a drink." "You were shaking," Gabriel noted. "Why were you shaking?" "Because you were staring at me," she lied. "Keep it up," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. "I'm watching you, and unlike Richard, I don't believe in ghosts." Maya retreated to the kitchen, hands trembling. Richard had recognized her, or at least the ghost of the woman he destroyed. The clock was ticking faster. She had to act before they figured out exactly who she was. A message on her phone from unknown. "The gala is Saturday. The red ledger is in the safe in the master suite. The code changes every 24 hours. You need to get Stone out of the room." Maya looked across the room at Gabriel, who was watching the perimeter like a hawk. Getting him out of the way meant making him the distraction. The Sterling Foundation Gala was the event of the season, held at the Pier Hotel in Manhattan, a ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and billions in net worth. Serafina had prepared for days, but for Maya, preparation was different. That morning, Serafina handed her a dress. "Wear this," she said with a smirk. "It's vintage." It was a hideous neon pink, puffy taffeta gown from the 80s, designed to make Maya look ridiculous amidst the sleek black tie elegance. Maya put it on, knowing the game. Refuse and she'd seem ungrateful. Wear it, and she was the court jester. But Maya had scissors. 10 minutes before leaving, she altered the dress, cutting off the puffy sleeves, ripping the tulle skirt into a high slit, pinning the bodice to fit like a glove. When she walked to the limousine, she didn't look ridiculous. She looked avant-garde, striking. Serafina's jaw dropped. "What did you do?" "I made it work," Maya said simply. Serafina narrowed her eyes. "You think you're clever? Just wait." The gala was a sea of flashbulbs. And Maya walked 3 steps behind Serafina, holding her clutch. As inside the ballroom, the elite of New York drank and gossiped. And Gabriel Stone was there, of course, wearing a tuxedo. Speaking into an earpiece, his eyes scanning the room. He spotted Maya in her altered pink dress, and for a split second, a look of impressed amusement flickered across his face before returning to stone-cold professionalism. And the plan was simple, according to the text from Unknown. During the keynote speech, Richard would be on stage. Gabriel would be guarding the stage, the master suite at the pier, where the Sterlings were staying for the night, would be guarded by a junior security officer, and Maya needed to slip away, get to the suite, find the safe, and photograph the ledger. But Serafina made her move first because at 9 p.m., just as appetizers were being cleared, Serafina grabbed Maya's arm, looking frantic, and said, "My bracelet. The diamond tennis bracelet, the Cartier one. It's gone," and Maya said, "I haven't seen it." But Serafina raised her voice and said, "I gave it to you. I handed it to you in the limo because the clasp was loose," as people started to turn. And Maya said calmly, "You didn't give me anything." But Serafina shrieked, "You thief," in a performance worthy of an Oscar, crying, "Daddy, she stole my bracelet." And Richard Sterling turned from his conversation with the mayor as the music stopped and security moved in. And Gabriel was at Maya's side in an instant while Serafina demanded, pointing at the small purse Maya was carrying, "Check her bag." And Maya felt a cold pit in her stomach because she knew the bracelet was in there. Serafina must have slipped it in when Maya was distracted in the cloakroom. And if they found it, it was over prison. The end of the plan, so Gabriel said, "Give me the bag." And Maya looked at him and saw the calculation in his eyes. He expected to find it, and she whispered, "I didn't take it. You know I'm not stupid enough to steal jewelry." But Gabriel repeated, "The bag," and Maya handed it over, her hands shaking, as Gabriel unzipped the clutch and reached inside while Serafina smirked, waiting for the flash of diamonds. But Gabriel's hand rummaged around, paused, and he looked at Serafina, then back at the bag, pulled his hand out, and said loudly, "There's nothing here but a lipstick and a phone." And the room went silent as Serafina's face went white and she said, "What? That's impossible. Check again." But Gabriel said, his voice final, "I checked. It's not there." And Richard Sterling said, annoyed, "Maybe it fell in the limo," then added, "Serafina, stop making a spectacle. Sit down." While Serafina stood humiliated, her mouth opening and closing like a fish as she glared at Gabriel and then at Maya, who was stunned because she knew the bracelet had been in there, had felt the weight of it earlier, and realized Gabriel had found it and palmed it. He had saved her, and she didn't know why. As the commotion died down and the lights dimmed for the speeches, and Gabriel moved close, leaning in so his breath brushed her ear, whispering, "I have the bracelet in my pocket. You owe me big time." And she whispered back, "Why?" And he said, "Because I want to know what you're really doing. A thief steals for money. You're not here for money, you're hunting. And I want to know what the prey is." Then pulled back and said, "Now Richard is going on stage. You have 20 minutes before the speeches end. If you're going to do whatever you're planning to do upstairs, do it now. I've pulled the guard from the suite." And Maya stared at him, shocked because he was letting her in, and he hissed, "Go." And Maya didn't waste a second, slipping through the crowd toward the service elevators, ascending to the penthouse suite, entering the dark room, finding the safe behind the painting just as Unknown had described, needing the code, trying her mother's birthday, 0714. Error, then Serafina's birthday, error, pausing to think what was the one thing Richard Sterling cared about. Obsessively protected, the date of his first million, which she didn't know, panic setting in as she had 3 minutes left before the lock would auto-freeze, until she remembered something from the text messages she had intercepted on her first day. A recurring calendar reminder Richard had. January 20th, the day his company went public. And she typed a 120, click, the heavy steel door swung open, revealing stacks of cash, passports, and a small red leather book, which Maya grabbed and opened to find not just numbers, but a list of names: judges, senators, police captains, and next to each name a payment amount and a favor granted. This was it, the black book, the proof that Richard Sterling ran New York like a mob boss. And she pulled out her phone and started snapping photos. Page after page, her hands flying, until she heard the elevator ding down the hall. Someone coming, and she snapped the last page. Dated 24 years ago, which read, "Payment to Cynthia Linwood, $500,000. Condition, silence regarding the child. Termination of employment." And Maya stared at her mother's name as tears welled up instantly. Because he had paid her off. He had bought her silence. And the footsteps were at the door as Maya shoved the book back into the safe, slammed it shut, spun the dial, and dove behind the heavy velvet curtains just as the door opened. And it was Richard Sterling, and he wasn't alone. "And I saw her leave the ballroom," Richard's voice growled. "Find her now. I'm looking, sir," came Caleb's voice. "And she knows something," Richard said, pacing the room, stopping inches from where Maya was hiding. "When I looked at her, I saw Cynthia. If she is Cynthia's brat, she's a loose end. And you know what we do with loose ends." And Maya held her breath, pressing her hand over her mouth. "Trapped," as Caleb said, his voice trembling. "If she's the daughter, does she have a claim to the estate?" And Richard replied coldly, "Not if she's dead. Call Stone. Tell him to bring the car around back. We're taking her for a ride tonight, one way." And Maya's blood ran cold because this wasn't a game anymore. They were going to kill her, and she clutched her phone to her chest. The evidence in her hand, but trapped in a room with two men who wanted her dead. And the only man who knew where she was, Gabriel, was the man who cleaned up their messes, and she wondered if Gabriel had sent her up here to get the evidence or to be caught. As she held her breath until her lungs burned behind the heavy velvet curtain and watched Richard Sterling's polished shoes pace back and forth on the Persian rug while Caleb muttered, "Shaking, Stone is taking too long. What if she went to the police?" And Richard snapped, "She has nothing, no proof. Just the word of a disgruntled waitress against a man who built this city. But I want her gone tonight." And then the door to the suite opened and heavy, deliberate footsteps entered. And Gabriel Stone's calm, professional, terrifying voice filled the room. "Mr. Sterling," as Richard demanded. "Did you find her?" And Gabriel said, "I secured the perimeter. And I found this," followed by a soft thud. And Maya peeked through the slit in the curtains to see Gabriel throw her clutch bag onto the table, the one he had confiscated downstairs, as he said. "She's still in the building," and walked slowly toward the window, toward the curtains where Maya was hiding, her heart hammering like a trapped bird because he knew exactly where she was. And Gabriel stopped right in front of the curtain, reached out, and Maya thought, "This is it. He's going to hand me over." And Gabriel ripped the curtain back and said, expressionless, "Found her," as Maya gasped, stumbling back against the glass, and Richard Sterling turned with a cruel smile spreading across his face, saying, well, the little ghost." And Maya blurted, holding up her phone, "I have the photos. I have the ledger. If you touch me, it goes to the press." And Richard laughed dryly and said, "You have no signal up here, darling, and you're not leaving this room with that phone." Then nodded to Gabriel and said, "Stone, take her. You know the protocol. Make it look like a drug overdose, a tragic end for a troubled girl." And Gabriel looked at Maya, his eyes unreadable, and said, "Understood, sir," grabbing her arm with an iron grip as Maya struggled, kicking and screaming, "Let me go, you're a monster. Everyone will know." And Gabriel growled, twisting her arm painfully. "Quiet," dragging her toward the door while Caleb stepped forward, eager, saying he'd drive. Only for Gabriel to cut him off. "No, you stay here. You're a liability, you panic. I do this alone." As Gabriel shoved Maya into the hallway past the confused junior security guard, marched her to the service elevator, pressed the button for the garage, And as the doors closed and isolated them, Maya spun on him and accused, "You traitor, you set me up. You told me to come up here," while Gabriel stared straight ahead at the descending floor numbers and said, "Shut up, Maya, check your pocket." And Maya paused, reached into her blazer, felt a cold, hard object, the diamond bracelet, as Gabriel said, "I put it back when I grabbed you. If we get stopped by cops, you're a thief. If we don't, it's your severance pay." And when she asked where he was taking her, he said flatly, "To the river." And the elevator opened into the VIP garage, where a black SUV waited. Gabriel throwing her into the passenger seat, locking the door, jumping into the driver's seat and peeling out, tires screeching. As they hit the city streets, and Maya watched the GPS, heading toward the West Side Highway and the docks, whispering, "Please, you don't have to do this. I know you saw the ledger, you saw what he did." But Gabriel drove with surgical precision, weaving through traffic as Richard called, and Gabriel answered on speaker. "Is it done? En route, sir. Eats at 10 minutes. Good." Burn the phone afterwards, and Gabriel hung up, rolled down the window, and threw his phone onto the highway at 60 miles per hour, making Maya stare as he swerved the car, skipped the dock exit, cut across 3 lanes with horns blaring, shot toward the Lincoln Tunnel, and when Maya whispered, "You missed the turn," he said, "I know," and reached under the dashboard, ripped out a GPS tracker, and tossed it out the window to "What are you doing?" Maya demanded. And Gabrielle finally looked at her as the mask of the cold-hearted security chief dropped away, leaving him looking utterly exhausted, and he said, "I'm kidnapping you. Because if I leave you in New York tonight, you'll be dead by morning. And I've spent 3 years working undercover to get that ledger. And I'm not letting you get killed before we can use it." And Maya was stunned, saying, "Undercover? You're police." And Gabriel replied, "FBI. Operation Glass Castle," explaining that they'd been trying to nail Richard Sterling for racketeering and murder for a decade, but could never get the safe code, because they needed a family member or someone with family blood. And he looked at her with a grim smile and said he didn't help her because he liked her. He helped her because she was the key, and when he asked if she had the photos and she said yes, he told her to hang on because Richard had just realized his cleaner had gone rogue and was about to send the whole world after them. And they drove for 2 hours deep into the industrial wasteland of New Jersey, until they stopped at a motel that looked like it rented rooms by the hour, its neon sign buzzing ominously with no vacancy. Though Gabriel kicked open the door to room 104 like he'd clearly used this safe house before, ordering her not to touch the curtains as he tossed a burner phone onto the bed and told her to connect her phone to the hotspot and upload the photos to the secure server he was about to give her. "Do it now." And Maya sat on the lumpy mattress with shaking hands as she accessed the cloud and asked why he hadn't told her. And Gabriel, pacing the small room and checking his gun, said it was because she was a terrible liar, and if she'd known he was a Fed, Richard would have seen it on her face. That he needed her terrified because fear looks authentic, adding that she almost broke his arm, he saved her life, and she was welcome. While the upload bar crawled across the screen from 20% to 40%, and suddenly Gabriel asked who she was. The entry in the ledger, Cynthia Linwood. And Maya said without looking up that she was her mother, Richard's secretary. That they'd had an affair, and when she got pregnant, he paid her $500,000 to disappear and made her sign a contract saying she'd never tell Maya who her father was. And Gabriel stopped pacing and asked about the money. And Maya said bitterly that it went to medical bills. That her mother got sick when Maya was 10. The money was gone by 12. And she died broke while Richard lived in a palace, and her mother died in a hospice ward in Queens because they couldn't afford better care. And as the upload hit 90%, the motel room's landline phone rang with a jarring, shrill sound, freezing Gabriel because nobody knew they were there, and this was a dark sight, and he motioned for Maya to stay back. picked up the receiver without speaking, and a female voice purred. "Hello, Gabriel," and it wasn't Richard. It was Serafina, making Gabriel's eyes widen as he slammed the phone down and said they had to go now. Telling Maya it was Serafina and they'd been found. Realizing with a curse that it was her phone. The metadata in the photos uploaded to the cloud. That there was a backdoor into the server, and Richard owned the hosting company and he hadn't checked it. When glass suddenly shattered and a tear gas canister smashed through the window, hissing white smoke, and Gabriel grabbed Maya, shielding her with his body as he kicked open the back door. And they spilled into the alley behind the motel where the night air was, filled with sirens that weren't police, but private security. As black SUVs swarmed the parking lot, a voice shouting as two men in tactical gear sprinted around the corner, and Gabriel raised his standard-issue Glock from his ankle holster and fired 2 warning shots to make them dive for cover, shouting that the car was blocked and they had to head for the train yard, and they ran. Mia's heels breaking, so she kicked them off and ran barefoot over gravel and broken glass, scrambling over a chain-link fence into an abandoned rail yard where they hid behind a rusted tanker car gasping for air. And Mia checked her phone and panted that the upload was complete and she'd sent it, while Gabriel reloaded and said the FBI had it and it didn't matter if they were dead because Richard's men weren't there to arrest them. And then a voice echoed through the train yard, amplified by a megaphone as Serafina cleared her throat. Standing atop a shipping container 50 yards away, silhouetted against the floodlights of the SUVs like a queen surveying a battlefield. Shouting for Gabriel to give her the girl, that he could walk away and she'd even wire $5 million to an offshore account if he just handed over the waitress. And Gabriel looked at Mia, sweating. He was outnumbered 10-1. "Why is she here?" Maya whispered. "Why send the daughter?" "Because Richard is scared," Gabriel realized. "He's not leading the hunt because he's shredding documents back at the office. He sent Serafina to clean up his mess." Gabriel looked at Maya. "Can you run?" "Yes, there's a gap in the fence north side. Go, I'll hold them off." "No," Maya said, grabbing his arm. "If I leave, they kill you. And if you die, nobody can verify the evidence. We go together." Maya stood up. Before Gabriel could stop her, she stepped out from behind the tanker car into the spotlight. "Serafina!" Maya screamed. "Maya, get down!" Gabriel hissed. "You want me?" Maya yelled, holding her phone up high. "Come and get me. But you should know the live stream is already running." Serafina froze. "I'm live on YouTube right now," Maya lied, her voice cracking but loud. 80,000 people are watching. Wave to the camera, sister." It was a bluff, a desperate, insane bluff. Maya's YouTube channel had 0 subscribers. She hadn't even opened the app. But Serafina hesitated. She lived her life online. The threat of a live audience was more terrifying to her than a gun. She signaled her men to hold fire. "You're lying," Serafina called out, her voice wavering. "Am I?" Maya shouted back. "Check your feed. Billionaire hunts sister in New Jersey. It's trending." For a split second, Serafina looked down at her phone to check, and that was all the second Gabriel needed. "Go." They broke cover, sprinting toward the gap in the fence. Gunshots rang out behind them, pinging off the metal trains, but Serafina's hesitation had bought them distance. They scrambled through the hole in the fence and tumbled down an embankment onto a main road. A trucker was idling at a red light. Gabriel flashed his badge against the window. "Federal agent, open the door." The terrified driver unlocked the cab. They climbed in. "Drive," Gabriel ordered. The semi-truck rumbled away, leaving the private army behind in the dust. Maya slumped against the dashboard and looked at her phone. It was black. Dead battery. "You didn't stream it," Gabriel said, breathing heavily. "No," Maya smiled weakly. "But she believed I did." Rich people always believe everyone is watching them. We're not safe yet, Gabriel said, looking in the side mirror. Richard knows the FBI has the files now. He's cornered, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous thing on earth. We have to get to the Federal Plaza before he calls in favors to have us intercepted. Maya looked out the window at the passing lights. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She wasn't just a daughter. She was the woman who had just bluffed a dynasty and won. "Let's finish this," Maya said. The semi-truck air brakes hissed as it pulled up to the corner of Broadway and Worth Street in Lower Manhattan. It was 4 a.m. The city was asleep, but the lights of Federal Plaza burned bright. Maya and Gabriel climbed down from the cab. They looked like they had been through a war zone. Maya's dress was torn, her feet were bleeding, and Gabriel's tuxedo was covered in dust and grease. "This is it," Gabriel said, checking his clip one last time. "Once we cross that plaza, you're the star witness. There's no turning back." "I never wanted to turn back," Maya said, gripping the phone, the digital smoking gun tightly in her hand. They walked toward the heavy glass doors of the FBI field office, but Richard Sterling had one last card to play. As they reached the steps, 3 black sedans screeched to a halt at the curb. 6 men in suits got out. They weren't private security this time. They were lawyers, led by Arthur Pendleton, the most expensive defense attorney in New York, a man known as the Undertaker because he buried the truth. "Miss Linwood," Pendleton shouted, holding up a hand. "Stop right there." Gabriel stepped in front of Maya. "Step back, Pendleton. She's in federal custody. She's a mentally unstable young woman who has stolen proprietary data," Pendleton said smoothly, flanked by 2 large men who looked more like thugs than paralegals. "We have an emergency injunction signed by Judge Kincaid 10 minutes ago. She is to be remanded to a psychiatric facility for evaluation immediately." He waved a piece of paper. Richard had woken a crook judge in the middle of the night. "It's over, Maya," Pendleton said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Your father just wants to get you help. Get in the car." Maya looked at the paper, then at the FBI building, 50 feet away. "He's not my father," Maya said. "He's my target." "Grab her," Pendleton ordered the guards. The guards lunged. Gabriel tackled the first one, sending them both crashing onto the concrete steps. The second guard reached for Maya. "Federal agents, get on the ground." The doors of the federal building burst open. A dozen tactical agents poured out, rifles raised, led by Assistant Director Sarah Jenkins. "Pendleton, back off, or I will arrest you for obstruction of justice." Jenkins screamed. Pendleton froze. The guards backed away. The sight of federal rifles was enough to break their paycheck loyalty. Gabriel stood up, wiping blood from his lip. He looked at Maya and nodded. "Go." Maya walked past the lawyers, past the injunction, and into the safety of the lobby. 6 months later, the trial of the century took place at the Southern District of New York. The media called it the Cinderella trial. The courtroom was packed. Every major news network was there. Richard Sterling sat at the defense table. Looking diminished without his expensive suits and spray tan, he looked like what he was, a scared old man. Maya took the stand, wearing a simple white blouse. She didn't look invisible anymore. District Attorney Robert Halloway, the prosecutor, walked her through the ledger, name by name, bribe by bribe, and finally, "Miss Linwood," Halloway said, "let's talk about the entry dated July 14th, 24 years ago. The payment to your mother." "He paid her to leave," Maya said, her voice steady. "But that wasn't the worst part." She turned to look at Richard. "We found the rest of the files, Richard. The toxicology reports from my mother's autopsy. You didn't just pay her. You had her prescription switched. The sickness that killed her, it was slow poisoning. Arsenic administered by the doctor on your payroll." The courtroom erupted. This was the twist nobody saw coming. The ledger didn't just prove corruption, it proved murder. Richard slammed his fist on the table. Lies, she's lying. The doctor testified this morning in a closed session, Holloway revealed calmly. He gave you up, Richard, to save himself. Richard Sterling slumped back in his chair. It was over. But the final nail in the coffin didn't come from the jewelry. It came from the gallery. Serafina stood up, sitting in the back row, dressed in black, looking like a widow. Is it true? She whispered, her voice carrying through the silent room. Did you kill her? Sit down, Serafina, Richard snapped. You told me she was a gold digger, Serafina said, tears streaming down her face. You told me my mother died of a heart attack. Did you kill her too? Was she too expensive to keep? Order. The judge banged the gavel, but the damage was done. The Sterling family wasn't just broken. It was incinerated. The aftermath. Richard Sterling was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without parole. He would die in a cell wearing the same cheap orange jumpsuit as the criminals he once looked down on. The Sterling assets were seized by the government. The penthouses, the yachts, the diamonds all sold to pay restitution to the victims. Serafina was stripped of her fortune. The last time Maya saw her, she was working as a hostess in a bistro in Brooklyn. They didn't speak, but Serafina gave her a nod, a silent acknowledgement of a truce. And Maya? She didn't take a dime of the settlement money. She donated her share to a legal defense fund for low-income service workers. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Maya sat on a bench in Central Park, reading a book. History of the Roman Empire? A voice asked. Maya smiled and looked up. Gabriel Stone was standing there, not in a tuxedo or tactical vest, but in jeans and a leather jacket. He had resigned from the FBI after the trial. I told you, Maya said. I like reading about how empires fall. You didn't just read about it, Gabriel said, sitting next to her. You made it happen. What are you doing here, Gabriel? I'm looking for a partner, he said. Private security, high-end consulting. We help people who can't help themselves. I need someone who can walk into a room, be invisible, and see everything. Maya closed her book and looked at the skyline of New York City. It didn't look like an impossible fortress anymore. It looked like a playground. I'm expensive, she teased. Gabriel smiled. I know, but you're worth it. Maya Linwood, the waitress who broke every rule, took his hand. When do we start? And that is the true story of how Maya Linwood took down the Sterling Empire. It proves that no matter how much money you have or how high your penthouse is, the truth always has a way of climbing the stairs. Richard Sterling died in prison 2 years ago, but the laws created after his trial protect workers to this day. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of revenge, justice, and secrets, please smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm share this story with more people. And if you want more true crime drama and twisted storytelling, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell. I post new stories every week that prove truth is stranger than fiction. What would you have done if you found that ledger? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next.